So following, 3 weeks later, Department of Children and Family Services called me in my chambers in the appellate court and said they had another baby, 8 days old, at a hospital on the west side, fetal alcohol cocaine baby, and we had a vacancy in our home, and would we take the baby? Oh, and I just remembered what Ed said, it was pretty hard, so I put them on hold. And I said, let me call my husband. So I called Ed, and he said, Anne, we cannot do this. It's just too hard to give the baby up. Okay. So I got back on the phone, and actually Desiree Rogers was in my chambers at the time. We were having tea. And I said, what time is the baby coming? So February 22nd, 1996, at 7:28, this little baby was delivered to us, and now he's 15.
He's still having.
He's 15 years old now.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I got home, we had a baby, which obviously we fell in love with immediately.
Well, let's turn to the appellate court part of the story. I think people have a good sense of what a trial court is like, and we have a pretty good sense of what a Supreme Court is like, but tell us what an appellate court is like, in the state system especially.
Well, there's a little over 50 appellate court justices in Illinois. There's 24 here in Cook County, which is the first district of judicial district. There's 5 judicial districts in Illinois, and we have 24 justices. Well, it's volume and population. We have a huge volume. So I was very fortunate to have 23 colleagues that are outstanding legal scholars, great people to work with. We had 6 separate divisions, 4 in each.
This is the first district's appellate court, 6 separate divisions within the
first district. Yes. And there was 4 in a division, 4 justices. So every week, 3 of us would be together. So if I was number 1 and number 2 and number 3, we would sit the first week. And then the second week, number 2, 3, and 4. The third week, number 1, 3, and 4. And likewise, so we rotate. So every week, there would be oral arguments once a week. We would have motion meetings. We all get together and do motions once a week and circulate opinions among ourselves. And we did that for almost 12 years.
Now, you said working with, sometimes appellate judges say it's actually sort of a lonely life. Did you find it that way?
Well, it's not lonely in the work, because you do work with others. It takes some skills, though, to work with others. I mean, you have to be collaborative. You want the best decision out there to work together. To have 3, 0 is great, but you might have 2, 1 dissenting or especially concurring. But you try to work together, and you have to be collaborative in that work. To get the best decision, best law out there. It doesn't always work that way, depends on personalities. But for the most part, I have to say that I've had nothing but great experiences. And in fact, one situation was such that the 3 of us were so upset about not being able to change the law. Appellate courts can't change the law, we have to follow the law, what the Supreme Court says. But this was crying out for a change. So we decided among ourselves that we needed to do a very, very strong dissent. So the majority wrote, the 2 majority wrote the majority opinion, and all 3 of us worked on the dissent in which I dissented on an issue. And it was very, very strong. We all had input. We all worked together. It was great. Not only that, it was so great that the Illinois Supreme Court for 11 terms did not decide whether to take it or not. It was there for 11 terms. So they were deciding whether they should take it or not take it, or take it or not take it. But that's a very unusual situation. But I was watching it very closely because my colleagues and I, because this was crying out. It was a policy issue. It needed to change the law. Ultimately, they didn't take it. So they never changed the law.
Well, that's an interesting behind-the-curtain story. The
Yes.
idea that the dissent actually had the collaboration
Of others, the
others.
majority.
But
Yes.
But you followed the law and the precedent
Yes.
as a court.
Yes.
Because that was the law.
That's the law. You couldn't do anything about it, but we wanted the Supreme Court to take this case because can't you see it needs to be changed? You know, and we all had input on it. Although I wrote the dissent, but it was such that not only did we try to speak to the Supreme Court in this dissent, but we also said, okay, legislature, if they're not going to do it, would you do it? So
now, the appellate court, you were first appointed, but then the time comes when you need to run for office.
Yes.
What was it like the first time actually standing for election as a judge?
Well, I've only stood for my husband's elections, near his side, all the years, and quite frankly, I was always happy that it was him running. It's a difficult, time-consuming, and stressful position to be in. Now I was going to have to do it on my own, and he couldn't help me. Maybe behind the scenes he could help me, but I had to stand there on my own. And you know, it isn't like campaigning for the state legislature or as an alderman or anything where your spouse could be right next to you. You know, no, not for a judicial position. You've got to have your own career credentials. Although sometimes I'm not permitted that. You know,
being married to a public figure.
Being married to a public figure, I'm not permitted that luxury very often.
And there are certain constraints on judicial elections that other office holders and candidates don't have.
As a sitting judge, yes. But if someone runs against you who isn't a sitting judge, they can do anything. Mm. And so that makes it difficult if you're a sitting judge, if you're there.
So did you have opposition that election?
The stars came together, and I didn't.
Which often happens in Illinois, but not always.
Very rarely lately.
Yeah.
Because being on a court of appeals is a career goal for a lot of lawyers. It's, you know, at the end of your career or in the middle of your career, you have a lot of experience in a certain area, and you know the law really well. It's a career topper, and it's just to think about the law, if you really love it, to engage in intellectual conversations about the law, like the dissent I told you about, you know, and to actually make a difference in making it better for the citizens of Illinois in many ways. It gives you a great platform in which to do that. You can't go out of the constraints of what the law is, but you sure can speak.
Sure.
You know, and so it's a great place. So I was very lucky and did not have an opposition.
So I'm trying to remember. So you would have run for retention?
I would have. No, I didn't.
You would have. You didn't get to that point.
I was 11 years, 11 months, and filed for retention when I was nominated and appointed to the Supreme Court. So I withdrew my retention application and gave up my appellate court seat to be on the Illinois Supreme Court. Win, lose, or draw, to be on the Illinois Supreme Court. I never thought about being a judge, even on the appellate court, ever, or even the Court of Claims in my whole life. I could have been very happy staying on 51st Street, enjoying every second of it. But I figured that there must be a reason why I'm doing all these things, and from gym and kids with disabilities and neighborhood law offices. I'm a spiritual person, and I do believe that there is a reason for me to have had that foundation to be where I am in my life, in my career, and to have all that information now sitting on this Supreme Court about disabled kids, in a number of things, is a good place, I think, for me.
Well, just as an observer, something else I think you brought to the Supreme Court is the Illinois Supreme Court traditionally had been a place where some of the justices were really loners, and in Springfield especially, you're thrown together in a kind of fraternity house where you're together 24/7, and the reputation is that you've actually brought a kind of a cohesion to the court that has been hard to achieve in the past. Am I right in saying that was one of your goals?
I don't know if it's my goal, maybe it's my personality. You know, I think that because I'm a gym teacher, I'm a phys ed teacher and a recreation counselor, camp counselor. And that's how I treat everybody in my life, you know. So we'll all do this together and we're all going to do this and now we're going to do that. And they seem to say, okay. So I guess that's the way it is, and they seem to enjoy some of the Justice Garman, who is the second female in Illinois elected to the Illinois Supreme Court from Central Illinois. She and I became co-conspirators against our male colleagues in activities outside the court, such as the Illinois Historic Preservation Commission and other activities. So we have planned things, and we've gotten our male colleagues to come along, some of them grudgingly, but then they've enjoyed everything we've planned for them.
Well, and I do have to say that I sometimes bump into you around town during the lunch hour or whatever, and often as not, I see you enjoying a social gathering with one or more of your colleagues from the court, which,
yes.
Again, speaking as a practicing lawyer, I think is unusual.
I've heard that too. I never paid attention to it before because it wasn't in my radar watching the Supreme Court. I just liked doing what I was doing, but I never really paid attention to that. And I have heard the stories about how they became loners, and you asked the question about loners on the appellate court, and I didn't really finish that. There's a lonely feeling because not within working together, but with the rest of the world, because you don't get out to be in the trial courts and with people. It's an academic, intellectual experience of research and that. So unless you make an effort, you're not going to do it. If something comes to you, you're going to participate, but you really have to make an effort. And I did do that on the appellate court. I became the recreation leader on the appellate court. I had every month an activity. Sometimes they knew what the activity was, and sometimes they didn't. It was always a lunch, or if there was a good theater show, that we do dinner and bring our spouses and things like that. But one of the activities my goal was to take people who, some of them live in the suburbs, places they never were before. And
like museums, for example?
Oh yes, museums. Sure. They were here. And how about actually juvenile court? They've never been to juvenile court. But there were a couple times when I gave them an envelope with, say, the Orange Line ticket in it. It was a destination restaurant. It was so we took the Orange Line from downtown Lake Street, so I could show them the gentrification along Archer Avenue and the neighborhoods in Bridgeport all the way out to Lindy's Chili. So we had Lindy's Chili and Gertie's Ice Cream, and they could see Lindy's Chili is at Western and about 35th Street. And it's a well-known place. And it's right at McKinley Park. And I would tell them the history of McKinley Park. McKinley Park was a racetrack at the turn of the century, and now it's a park. And, things like that they'd never knew before. And then we take the Orange Line back with our taffy apples. Another time, I think it's the Blue Line that's down Lake Street. So I gave them the envelope for the Blue Line. I think it's the Blue Line. And we went out to Garfield Park to see Chihuly exhibit. And we had box lunches out there. So things like that. And then we did a Halloween.
Green Line.
The Green Line, that's it. Yeah, green, thanks.